Thank you. Ms. Kimball, please, a motion.
A motion to approve bill number 217.
Have to. Is there a second?
Have to second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Ms. Kimball, seconded by Mr. Richards. Go ahead, Ms. Kimball.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to everyone that submitted testimony and came today to testify online. And also thank you to the members of the working group for Waipio Valley that have been working literally for decades on trying to come up with solutions for access to the valley. One of Val's objectives to introducing this piece of legislation was to encourage broader public discussion on the issue, and I think that has clearly been achieved. When I'm looking at a piece of legislation to determine whether or not to move it forward, there are 4 essential questions. Is it needed? Is it within our jurisdiction and in accordance with county, state, and federal law? Is it workable and enforceable? And is it free of harmful unintended consequences? To the first question, absolutely, something needs to be done with respect to management of Waipio Valley. There is consensus among the working group members and most of the testifiers, even those in opposition to the bill, that the level of traffic pre-COVID-19 down to the valley is unsustainable. I'd like to refer everybody to Communication 47 that was distributed this morning, which shows a breakdown of the traffic to the valley from 2017 until November 30th of this year. And as you can see, there's been a steady increase in traffic from both pedestrians and rental car vehicles. We were on track pre-COVID-19 to continue that trend this year. And while there have been no recent fatalities, the road was not designed for this level of traffic, and there is potential for a public safety issue. There is also consensus among the working group and the community that there is a need for greater education about the valley, that respect needs to be shown to protect the rights of the property owners and those who live and work down in the valley, as well as the cultural heritage and unique and fragile environment of the valley. It's important for everyone to understand that most of the valley at the end of the county road is privately owned, and that families in the valley have had to deal with trespassers, vandalism, and damage to their personal property and to their crops. In recent history, we've also had visitors go down into the valley and go into areas where they ended up in harm's way and needed to be rescued. So the answer to the first question, is it necessary, is a resounding yes. The second question is it in our jurisdiction, and is it in accordance with county, state, and federal laws? It is absolutely within our jurisdiction. In fact, the one thing that we can do as a council without involvement of any departments or other agencies is prohibit pedestrian traffic. However, there are valid concerns that have been raised with the amended version of this bill about the legality, including the constitutional question of whether or not we're treating people equally under the law, and with respect to this Public State Highways Act of 1892. It is our responsibility as a body to explore these concerns and give the new corporation council appointed by the mayor the opportunity to evaluate them before proceeding forward. The third question, is it workable and enforceable? There are valid concerns about the ability to enforce this bill. Rocky and Darren, the 2 rangers that serve at the top of the valley, work very hard and are care deeply about the valley, but we've put them in a position where they're supposed to make a judgment call with little or no guidance. They have no legal enforcement authority, and so if there are challenges for people going down into the valley, and if they need to call the police in, we are stretching thin the police presence in the area, which is already underserved. And finally, to the answer of are there unintended consequences, it is possible that by limiting pedestrian traffic, we will increase vehicular traffic. And it's also possible that by limiting access, we will be sending people to areas of the island that are less prepared to deal with that pressure. It is my recommendation at this time that this body postpone decision-making on this bill until some of these issues can be worked through. There's also a geotechnical study, which will be due sometime mid-January, that would have relevant impact on how we proceed. I understand that there will be frustration for those who have worked in the working group for decades on coming up with solutions and who were excited to see action finally being taken. But with the shutdown due to the pandemic, we can expect the reduction in visitors and limits to large gatherings to continue this pause and give us some time to do this right and deliberate fully. In closing, I strongly want to affirm that I am committed to developing a meaningful and workable solution concerning the management of this incredibly special place, and I want to take the time to address it. This is the time to address it. Several suggestions have been provided by the working group, and a thank you to all the suggestions that have been contributed through testimony that we can use to develop an overall strategy that I think can be a model to the management of other sacred places also on our island and across the state. I hope the other members of the council will join me in this commitment to share their expertise to help develop a long-term plan. Before I make the motion to defer, I would like to hear from the other members of the council on this matter. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you so much for that. Ms. Kimball, anyone else? Mr. Richards, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, thank you, Ms. Kimball. Well stated and well put. On your fourth point, talk about unintended consequences, and I want to address that in a second. First of all, I want to thank Val Poindexter for bringing this to the table to have the discussion, because we can't talk about it unless we're actually talking about it. So we are now talking about it. But as been stated before, on some other legislations I work on, this one's not ready for prime time yet. And to the point, to Ms. Kimball's conversation about unintended consequences, 6 valleys away we have Pololu Valley. And my community, which is on the other side of the valleys, have raised a concern about Pololu Valley and the impact on that valley. If we were to shut hiking into Waipio, people are going to go someplace else, and that's going to be Pololu. And why I say that, and what my concern is there, we have been working on getting the state with landowner there, surety, to establish a parking lot, luas, facilities, to have a trailhead to start for that hiking. I was down there maybe a month ago now, and there were over 40 cars parked in that area trying to hike down into Pololu, and that's before Waipio is closed down. My community is very concerned about that unintended consequence, and so I think a bigger conversation needs to be had here. We need a big plan for Waipio, yes, but I think we need a big plan for the valleys and the access to those valleys. It's going to take state involvement. It's going to take the private landowner involvement. Very concerned about the farmers in Waipio and how we're going to address that. And so I'm glad this is on the table. And Heather, I am very glad that you are committed to keep going. We're not hitting the pause button indefinitely. What we have to do is we have to stop, because I'm very concerned about Pololu Valley. We are over capacity. Waipio, there's bathrooms, there's a pavilion, there's observation. We have a small little parking lot for Pololu, and 6 cars is a full capacity. Expecting to handle 40 is ridiculous, and if that's going to go up, and this is before anything happens with the tourism upticking. So with that, I'm going to support the postponement on this, and we get the working groups going right away. Kohala has to be part of this conversation, because it must be a comprehensive plan when we look at the valleys as in its entirety. So with that, Chair, I'm going to be supporting the postponement, and I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Ms. Leroy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I too, speaking for Ms. Kimball, will be supporting the amendment to defer. As Mr. Richards mentioned, all too often, because of the Sunshine Law, we have to put something forward so that the community can begin to chew on it. And boy, did they chew on it. I had a wonderful discussion with the group from Na'alahele, and they provided some incredible insight and solutions. And as Ms. Kimball mentioned, there have been, and this is what was really encouraging, is that the testimony that we saw provided avenues of solutions that could be taken out into the broader community. Because what we do here, like Mr. Richards said, could be used as a model for other places. And if done well and done right, it can be a tool for all of our special places across this entire special island. So I will be supporting the deferral. And even in addition to that, Ms. Kimball, there's also opportunities to request public hearings where you could actually use that as a tool to gain more input and cohesiveness around whatever is kind of being presented. It is a complex issue and it will take a lot of conversations and just a lot of people at the table. So thank you very much. I will be supporting the deferral.
Thank you, Ms. Leroy. Anyone else in Kona first? Let me go to Kona.
Yeah, Miley, it's me, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron. Go ahead.
Okay. This is an interesting issue that it's brought out a lot of intelligent discussions in my estimation. I wanted to make one comment about a person, an individual who's in favor of this proposal. That's Jim Kane. He's down in the valley. Very, very articulate, passionate person. He gave me a call yesterday. I never called him back though, because I figured I'm gonna share my thoughts on the floor anyway. But I think though that the issues that he's concerned about are not specifically addressed by the proposal that's before us. And the reason why I voted in favor of this measure, well, the first, that committee, and what is this, a second reading, or is it first reading today? Well, at the committee level, it was really in deference to an outgoing council member and the efforts that she had put forth. But I will say this, and the hook for me was that it would be the first step. It's not perfect, but it'd be the first step. But when I really sat down and thought about it, it really flew in the face of all of my good sense. It wasn't something that I could support. I was doing this for all the wrong reasons. Deferring to another council member. Shouldn't have done that. I'm letting everybody know, as drafted, I cannot support this. It's if that's the best that people can come up with after 10 years of discussion, that's not saying much. There has to be better ways of doing this thing. I mean, just off the top of my head, one of the speakers today talked about regulating the traffic with lights. That's like a very simple solution. I don't see why we couldn't have implemented something like that a long time ago. But I actually think that this proposal is illegal. It goes against the Constitution of the state of Hawaii. So I just had to state that, but I'm open, to hearing other ideas. But as drafted, I cannot support this. I wanted to let everybody know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chung. Anyone else in Kona? Go ahead, Ms. Villegas.
Sure. I recognize a lot of the concerns that have been brought forward and respect what Mr. Chung has just said about the potential illegality of this legislation. I really want to first off though, Councilmember Kimball, thank you for outlining and being so articulate and specific about the boundaries and the parameters and what you set as the standards for legislation. That was really impactful for me to listen to the way that you outlined that, and I think it sets an excellent tone and a really fantastic benchmark and a filter for legislation. I see this issue as being something beyond the laws that we're talking about here. This is a direct example and reflection of the challenges and the opportunities that we face and are becoming more and more evident as we have to transition from a tourism industry that we have marketed to the world and instead start working on our protocols for managing our natural resources and working within the parameters of the communities, of the diverse reflections of the land, especially in Waipio. There are so many different groups and organizations and private entities and public entities. So I see this as an opportunity, and I want to really commend you. I will be also in support of a deferral on this, but I think that as we continue to navigate a path to a more balanced and healthy economy and ecosystem in Hawaii, that this is a direct reflection of an opportunity for us to identify ways to manage the tourism to our island, the impacts of the visitors, and not as we transition from just marketing, because there is a capacity on our resources. So I really thank you for taking the time and the diligence, and as much as we'd all like to have an answer, this is a reflection of a big, broad topic, but one that's very imperative to our island home. So with that, I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Villegas. Anyone else? Mr. Inaba?
Go
ahead.
You know, I also got a call from Mr. King yesterday. I had a good conversation with him on the phone. I've had the opportunity to read through every piece of testimony regarding this bill, and with Ohana down there who are farmers, I stand for what this bill, what I believe the intention of this bill is. However, I have a hard time with things that restrict based on Native Hawaiian practices, and I can say that as a Native Hawaiian. It bothers me to go to places and have to prove that you're a Hawaiian practicing your rights. And you can have people who are born and raised in Honoka'a who are not Hawaiian, and this bill would exclude them from being able to walk down something they might have done their whole lives. So as it stands, I think a big part of this is enforcement in the code as it exists. It requires four-wheel drive vehicles to go down into the valley. We know that there are tourists and just people going down in non-four-wheel drive vehicles. So even though that's already in the code, enforcement is difficult. So I think that's going to be a big part of the discussion, and I will support postponement of this, and I won't be able to support it as it currently stands. So mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Inaba. Ms. Kirkowitz, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to recognize and acknowledge Councilmember Kimball for your really thoughtful handling, graceful handling of the situation. You really inherited a very sensitive issue. And it's great to know that you're going to be working in partnership with Councilmember Richards and community stakeholders to do the right thing and create a really thoughtful, meaningful management plan for the area that addresses the issues that residents of the valley have, but also ensuring that folks have public access. I'm really glad that we're hitting the pause button on this, because oftentimes government's knee-jerk reaction to anything is to just regulate. We've over-regulated things. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to know was Councilmember Poindexter alluded to there being decades of work being done in partnership with community. I'm really curious to know what's been tried. What's been tried? Where have we failed that got us to this point of having to overregulate? So I'm in full support of postponing this measure so that we get to a place where we're really engaging community and seeing this as an opportunity to educate, to share more information with visitors and residents about culture, about Aina proper stewardship. So thank you. I'll be supporting you. Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkowitz. Anyone else here in Hilo? No? Then, Ms. Kimball, you want to say something
I just want to say mahalo to all of the other members of the council for all of your input on this, and I look forward to working with all of you, and I know you all do share my commitment to see something happen successfully here. If it's appropriate this time, I'd like to make the motion to postpone this to the call of the chair.
Okay,
Second.
before you do that, can I just say something?
Yes. I recall my statement.
No, I just wanted to thank you myself because I really believe and agree with all of the council members how complex and sensitive this matter is, and regulation definitely does not solve all, but in your situation and given the specialness of this place, time needs to be taken, and the weigh-in from the community is definitely important on this one, and also other agencies, state agencies, and county departments as well. So I really applaud you in your foresight to put the brakes on this one. Thank Miss Poindexter. Her heart was in the right place, and I applaud her for that. But look at the good that's come out of it, because right now we're all on the same page. So with that, go ahead with your motion to postpone.
Well, and thank you for reminding me to acknowledge former Councilmember Poindexter. One of the things she did hope to achieve was more public discussion, and that has happened. So from that regard, I count this as a success. And with that, I'd like to make the motion to postpone to the call of the chair for Bill 217. Mahalo.
Richards, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Ms. Kimball, seconded by Mr. Richards to postpone. What is this, Bill 217, draft 2, to the call of the chair. Any discussion? See none, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? We have 9 ayes, Mr. Clerk. Thank you very much. Now, can we move on to Bill 216, draft